the heart-wrenching case of a 14-year-old girl who died during childbirth in Marange in Zimbabwe's Manicaland province has sent shockwaves across the continent. According to reports, the girl, memory Machaya, who had been forced out of school and into marriage at age 13, died in July and was secretly buried 2 hours later by the Apostolic Church. And to talk more on this, we're joined by Southern Africa Director at Human Rights Watch Africa Division, Dewa Mavhinga. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time this evening. There was a lot of outcry when this story, made its way into the public domain, but we soon learned that she was not the only little girl that had been married off to an older man in that particular church. It was indeed a concerning story. Tell us about your reaction when you saw that report.
Well, good evening, Bongiwe, and good evening to the viewers and listeners. Yes, it was really a shocking, tragic case of a 14-year-old girl who was pregnant and died during childbirth at an apostolic sect shrine in the Manicaland province of Zimbabwe. And she had been denied access to medical help or to health professionals. And it is a common practice within this apostolic faith church that young girls are married off as soon as they reach puberty. They are considered ripe for marriage. They are withdrawn from school, denied access to education. And this religious sect also believes that its members should not seek medical help and should not visit hospitals. And as such, childbirth is done, child delivery is done at the church shrines, and it's very unsafe. And we know that young girls are not ready to carry pregnancies to term. And as such, this is what happened to this young girl, Anna Machaya, and she tragically lost her life during childbirth. And as she was pleading for help, the so-called midwives decided to do some rituals, rubbing salt all over her body and pouring, paraffin into her nostrils in the belief that this would ease the labor pains. Very tragic, but it's widespread, and the authorities in Zimbabwe have been very slow to take action. And even with this particular case, following the social media and public outcry that was generated from women's rights groups, from children's rights groups, and human rights groups like ourselves, it took a month for those involved to be arrested. The so-called husband of this young girl and other family members who had tried to cover up and to lie to the police that in fact the girl was not 14 but 22, and tried to produce fake documents about her identity. And also the midwives who were involved in this horrific human rights abuse of denying this young girl access to health and therefore denying her right to life.
And when one really looks at that statement by the police that even corrects her name from memory to Anna and her age as well, and this alleged cover-up that is said to have taken place here, it's horrifying that parents could go to such lengths to justify something like this, especially when you look at the child only being 14 years old.
Absolutely, Bongiwe, and these are the harmful effects of religious and cultural practices in terms of perpetuating child marriages behind closed doors in silence, when hundreds of thousands of girls suffer in silence and are forced to deliver in unsafe places without any support, and with the authorities turning a blind eye to these things. We know that in January 2016 in Zimbabwe, the Constitutional Court banned child marriages of anyone below the age of 18. But this practice is continuing in some of these churches that have got powerful political connections. So it's a huge concern, and we are calling on the authorities to say enough is enough. This is now the time to stand up for the rights of the girl child and to end this terrible practice that violates the rights of the girl child.
And one of the things that you say is really the importance of, you know, the legislation that has been put into place, which doesn't look like it's being respected. And when you look at what the Women Affairs Ministry has said, they say that according to statistics in the country, 1 in 3 girls are exposed to being married below the age of 18, and child marriages are up from 18%. If there is such legislation that is preventing this from taking place, what do you think is making these churches continue with such impunity?
Well, there are a number of challenges there, and one of the problems has been a failure by the authorities to arrest and bring to justice the culprits. So in this particular case, we have seen that there has been an arrest. That's important because there was a sense of impunity where church leaders would simply marry off and marry young girls, impregnate them and rape them and violate them without justice, without accountability. And we also, as we have seen in this particular case of Anna Machaya, we have seen that families have been complicit and have been in collusion with the church authorities in perpetrating these abuses. You know, Anna Machaya died in the morning around 9 a.m. on the 15th of July and was buried 2 hours later with the members of her family being complicit in that heinous crime. So we need to say the society, the families should stand up and say enough is enough, should notify the authorities, and also should ensure that there are no child marriages happening in their communities. And also the school authorities, because this young girl was forcibly withdrawn from school at the age of 13. So we need better monitoring of the schools to ensure that girls are not unnecessarily withdrawn from school and that their right to education is protected by the school authorities.
One of the things that the state has found itself being criticized for is, you know, that the case might be weak because they're trying to pursue a charge of murder here instead of a provable statutory rape given her age. How difficult is it going to be to prove a case of murder, especially when you look at some of the girls whose videos we've seen being circulated? They understand this to be a practice for them. And they even say that they're not allowed to go to medical facilities because that's not how things work at the church.
Well, you are quite right, Bongiwe, about this, but there is an alternative charge of sexual abuse of a minor or sex with a minor that is also preferred, and there is the charge of murder. It will be difficult if people are not willing to come forward to testify, to give evidence of what happened. But we know that this gruesome act happened during an annual festival of this particular church. So there are many witnesses who saw what happened and who can testify and ensure that there is justice for Anna Machaya. And this is the critical aspect, to say it is up to members of the community and the families to come forward and support efforts of the justice system. Because if no one comes forward to testify, then it will be very difficult to find justice. But also, there is need, we have identified gaps here. There is need for more reforms to the law, to tighten the laws, to ensure that people do not get away with this kind of murder where they prevent young girls from seeking medical attention and force them to have unsafe child deliveries in the mountains and not in hospitals where there is adequate care. That is also being accomplices to murder for those midwives that were involved.
I can't help but think of those young girls who are married to men who are in their 50s, 60s, and some of them are just barely 20. And they say that they now have had 5 children. 3 maybe would have passed away, and they have 2. It's just harrowing stories that are coming out of some of those who are said to be there. Let's talk about how easy it will be for authorities to walk in and be able to remove those girls from the care of the church and put them in a safe place. Is that even an option that government is putting to the table here?
It certainly is an option and it is one way to end these tragic events. But again, Bongiwe, it depends on the willingness of family members to support their children, their loved ones, to support the justice system to ensure that these things do not happen, or other members of the community and society who can be whistleblowers when they see an act of so-called child marriage being committed. It is a crime. It should not be happening, even if it is in the church. If they are whistleblowers, then it would empower and enable the authorities to step in and protect the girl child, take them away from those situations. And so church members, community members should know that these are criminal offenses of denying access to medical facilities, of forcing girls into marriage before they are 18, of withdrawing girls from school to force them into marriage. And they should report these as criminal cases to the police and to the other governmental authorities.
One of the stories I was reading about, and this one is not even at that particular church, some children are saying that for them, how they became, wives at an age that they never envisioned that they were going to be was after falling pregnant. One of them says after falling pregnant at the age of 14, her mother took her to the boy's family, left her there and said, this is now your wife and you will get the children married because I'm not going to take care of your grandchild. Doesn't that then in and itself continue the cycle of abuse for this child who, yes, has done something they should not have had done, in fact, falling pregnant earlier on, but are the parents not further traumatizing them here?
You're absolutely right, Bongiwe. It's perpetuating a vicious cycle because parents think that they are being culturally or morally correct by punishing the girl child and forcing them into a marriage when they are not ready. But this is really harming the girl child. So again, there is need for a wide information services campaign to educate the parents as well, to know that they need to focus on the best interests of the girl child and not rush to believe that marrying them off is a solution or perhaps is a way into some kind of economic arrangement that can help them in difficult times. Because ultimately, it is only tying the girl child deeper into poverty and into multiple human rights abuses that they then face, including a risk of a loss of life in terms of complications during child delivery, as we have seen in the case of Machaya in Marange.
A very difficult story that needs urgent intervention. Dewa, Mavhinga, they're just talking to us around the issue of child marriages, that horrifying story that was making headlines in recent weeks of a 14-year-old who died while giving birth at a shrine in Zimbabwe. A very distressing story if you were to read some of the details there. And Dewa Mavhinga is with the Human Rights Watch, the Africa division.